Black CEO's daughter's seat, stolen by white passenger. Seconds later, the flight was grounded. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The plane hadn't even taken off, and already the air was heavy with judgment. Row 2A, first class, Horizon Airlines. A young black girl in a bright orange dress stood frozen in the aisle, clutching her boarding pass with both hands like it was proof of existence itself. Her name, Ava Carter, printed bold on the ticket, shimmered under the cabin light. In front of her sat a white man in a crisp beige suit, legs crossed, reading a magazine he clearly wasn't paying attention to. He glanced up once, eyes scanning her from hair to shoes, then scoffed. "Sweetheart, you must be lost. That's not your seat." Heads turned. A woman across the aisle smirked behind her champagne glass. A man further down whispered, "Oh, here we go again." Ava swallowed hard. Her voice came out soft, steady. "No, sir. It is my seat." Minus added. He didn't even look at the ticket she held. "You sure? First class isn't. Usually for unaccompanied minors." The word minors hung in the air like an accusation. A flight attendant approached, blonde, polished, professional smile, masking quiet annoyance. "Hi there, honey. Let's double-check your ticket, okay? Sometimes kids mix them up." Ava extended the pass. The attendant barely glanced before nodding to the man. "It's fine, sir. We'll find her another one." While Dax's an anecdote, laughter rippled faintly from a few rows back. Ava felt every sound vibrate in her chest. She looked down at her small hands, still gripping the ticket. Seat 2A. Exactly where she stood. But she didn't move. Not yet. The man sighed theatrically. "Come on now. Don't make a scene. Just sit where you belong." And that's when she looked him straight in the eyes, calm, unblinking, old beyond her years. "Sir," she said softly, "I belong right here." "Every port." The attendant frowned, glancing toward the back. "Security?" she whispered. The tension spread like smoke. Phones tilted slightly. Someone started recording. The cabin had gone from quiet to charged in a single breath. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Ava. The attendant reached for the ticket again, irritation replacing courtesy. "Honey, we don't have time for this." A new voice cut through the aisle, trembling but firm. Wait, her scan was green. I saw it. It came from the trainee flight attendant in the back, wide-eyed, holding a tablet. Silence fell again. The older attendant glared at her. "Stay in your lane, trainee." But the damage was done. Doubt cracked through the room like thunder. Ava didn't move, didn't cry. She just clutched her ticket tighter, the light catching the embossed Horizon Airlines logo, her family's company, though no one here knew it yet. Somewhere deep inside, she remembered her father's words before she boarded. "You don't have to prove who you are, Ava. Just stand where you belong." And so she did, right there, in 2A. The man muttered under his breath, "Unbelievable." But what was coming next would make him believe more than he ever imagined. The hum of the engines deepened, but the cabin stayed tense, still holding its breath. Ava Carter stood between rows of first-class seats, her ticket trembling slightly in her hand. She wasn't dressed like the other passengers. No designer coat, no pearls, no adult to vouch for her. Just a simple orange dress, small gold earrings, and the quiet confidence of someone raised in dignity. The flight attendant, Clara, leaned in again, voice dripping with authority disguised as kindness. "Sweetheart, let's not make everyone wait, okay? You can sit in the back for now. We'll sort it out later." Ava didn't move. Her eyes flicked to the small window, to the reflection of her own face, calm but unyielding. The reflection of someone who had heard this tone before. A man 2 rows back whispered to his wife, "First class isn't daycare." His wife shushed him, not because she disagreed, but because she didn't want to be caught on camera. The phone from the earlier passenger was still recording quietly from the aisle. A red light blinked faintly in the reflection. Ava lowered her voice, almost a whisper meant only for herself. "I'm not going anywhere." She thought of her father's rule, never shout to be seen, just stand until they can't ignore you. Marcus Carter didn't raise warriors, he raised witnesses. But this was her first flight alone, her first test. He'd told her to use her real name on the ticket. No fake accounts, no hidden security tag. "Let the world see you as you are," he'd said. "If it fails the test, that's on the world, not you." And now, the world was failing, right on schedule. Clara huffed. "All right, this is holding up boarding." "Sir," she turned to the man in the beige suit, "I apologize for the inconvenience. She must have made an error during check-in." He smirked. "It's fine. Kids these days think everything belongs to them." Ava blinked once, slow. Her small hands clenched tighter around the boarding pass. Lena, the young trainee, tried again. Her voice trembled, but it carried. "I saw her name on the manifest. Carter, AVA. Seat 2A, it's there." Clara snapped back. "Lina, do not contradict your lead attendant." But a few passengers turned their heads at that. The tension had begun to turn visible, the kind you could almost taste in the air. The man in beige exhaled, annoyed. "Can we please get this sorted before the flight turns into a daycare episode?" Clara forced a thin smile. "Of course, sir. We'll move her." She reached forward, gently but firmly pressing a hand to Ava's shoulder. It wasn't a shove, just enough to say, "You don't belong here." Ava's body went still, but her mind ran back years earlier, a flash of memory. The airport lounge. Her father, dressed down in jeans, being told, "Sir, that section's for members only." The same tone, the same calm that followed, the same silence before the storm. She looked up at Clara, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're making a mistake." Clara froze, thrown by the steadiness in that small voice. Behind her, Lena's eyes widened. She knew that tone. It wasn't fear, it was warning. Ava took a slow breath, lowered her ticket, and reached into her small crossbody bag. Her fingers brushed the phone her father had given her, the one synced to his private line. She hesitated, then looked back at the man still lounging in her seat, sipping water like victory tasted sweet. "Sir," she said quietly, "you should get up now." He laughed. "And why would I do that?" Ava's gaze didn't flinch. "Because my father doesn't like being called a liar." It took him a second to register what she'd said. Clara frowned, half confused. "And who exactly is your father, dear?" The engines roared a little louder. Ava slid the phone from her bag, thumb hovering over one name. Her voice stayed even. "You'll find out in a minute." And as she pressed call, the flight, and everyone on it, shifted from discomfort to history in the making. The hum of the cabin sharpened into silence, that kind of silence that feels like it's waiting to explode. Ava Carter held the phone near her chest, her thumb still glowing on Dad Horizon HQ. She didn't press call yet. She didn't have to. Not yet. The man in beige folded his magazine and exhaled loudly, pretending to be patient. "You see what I mean, Clara?" She's clearly confused. "Kids shouldn't travel alone like this." Clara forced a smile meant for damage control. "I completely understand, sir. We'll take care of it." Then, to Ava, her tone dropped an octave, the soft cruelty of a professional smile. "Sweetheart, this cabin is reserved for paying members. Maybe next time, okay?" Ava blinked once, slow and deliberate. "I am a paying member." A soft laugh rippled from behind, two women in row 3 whispering behind their phones. "Cute," one murmured. She memorized that from her parents. Ava turned slightly, just enough for the cabin to see her face, calm but hard as stone. "I memorized nothing." She looked at Clara again, voice steady but sharp. "You didn't even check the system." Lena, the trainee, hesitated, eyes flicking between the two attendants. Her tablet was still open. She whispered to herself, "It's there. Seat 2A. Ava Carter. It's right there." But before she could speak, Clara snapped. "Lena, step back, now." Lena froze, shoulders tight, caught between truth and protocol. The man in beige leaned back, smirking. "It's fine, sweetheart. Don't make it worse for yourself." Ava tilted her head slightly. "Worse? And That single word cut through the air like a blade. A murmur stirred among the nearby passengers. The woman in green from row 1 frowned. "Isn't that her name on the ticket?" she whispered to her husband. He nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, looks real to me." Clara noticed the eyes turning toward her. Panic flickered, barely visible but there. "Sir," she said louder, to the man in beige, "you stay seated. I'll handle this." Then she turned, motioned toward the galley, and muttered into her intercom. "Security to gate agent. Possible boarding error. First-class cabin. Ix Isavold." The words boarding error echoed faintly, like an insult in code. Ava stayed still. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice didn't. "You're calling security for me?" Clara didn't answer. She gave a tight, artificial smile. "Just protocol, sweetheart. Don't worry. No one's in trouble." But her tone said otherwise. From the back, Lena finally spoke, voice shaking. "She's not in the wrong seat. The system shows she." Clara spun around, eyes flaring. "Enough. You're a trainee, not a supervisor." "I said step back." Every head in the first-class cabin turned now. The murmur became audible. Someone whispered, "This is getting ugly." Another said, "Why not just check the computer?" But Clara didn't check. She doubled down. "Ma'am, you're disrupting boarding. If you don't cooperate, I'll have to call security." Ava let the words sink in. Disrupting boarding. She thought of the story her father once told her, how he'd been called disruptive the day he challenged a manager who denied him entry to his own board meeting. Same tone, same word. She didn't raise her voice. She just said, quietly, "You really don't know who you're talking to." Clara smirked. "Oh, I think I do. A child playing pretend in first class." Behind them, the man in beige chuckled, already scrolling through his phone like the matter was settled. Unbelievable. The entitlement these days. Lena took a step forward. "Ma'am, please stop. You're making a—" But Clara cut her off again, snapping, "If you say one more word, you'll be off this flight too." The tension snapped taut, the kind that hurts to breathe through. Ava's phone vibrated once in her palm. A new message flashed. "Dad, just landed. Everything okay?" She looked at the text, then up at Clara, then at the passengers watching like an audience to someone else's humiliation. She exhaled slowly and whispered to herself, "He told me to let the world show itself." And as she pressed call, the world was about to do exactly that. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the last of the passengers boarded, but inside row 2, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Ava Carter's phone pressed lightly against her ear. One ring, then another, but she didn't speak yet. She was waiting for them to dig the hole a little deeper. Clara stood tall, arms folded, blocking the aisle as if protecting order itself. "Security will come check this out, honey. It's nothing personal." The man in beige muttered, half under his breath, "Everything's personal these days." Lena, the trainee flight attendant, shifted uneasily by the galley. Her tablet still glowed, the passenger manifest open, the name right there, Ava Carter. Seat 2, verified. She'd seen it twice, and yet she was watching a lie unfold in real time. Her hands trembled slightly. She looked down at her own name tag, Lena Mendez, trainee, and felt the weight of silence pressing down on her throat. The passengers were starting to notice. A young woman 2 rows back whispered, "She's got the ticket. Why won't they just let her sit?" The man beside her shrugged. "Because they never do, until someone pulls a camera." That's when Lina's thumb hovered over the intercom button, just for a second. Then she stopped. Her eyes flicked toward Clara, who was now speaking to a ground agent by the cabin door. "Yes, a false seat claim," Clara said quietly. "Looks like someone got access to the wrong section. Maybe an online glitch." The words felt rehearsed, efficient, cruel. Ava heard every syllable. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. Her father's voice echoed in memory. "Silence isn't weakness, Ava. It's focus." Lina's pulse quickened. She could feel her own heartbeat in her ears. She looked at Ava, this little girl standing taller than the truth they were trying to bury. And suddenly she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She stepped forward, her voice small but carrying across the aisle. "That's not true. Her ticket's valid." Clara turned sharply, eyes like blades. "Excuse me? Her name's on the list. Lena said, voice shaking but clear. Seat 2A. I saw it. It scanned green. The cabin froze. A murmur rippled down the row. The man in beige straightened in his seat. You sure about that? He asked, a smirk hiding his unease. Clara hissed under her breath. Lena, step back right now. But Lena didn't move. She looked at Ava again, then at the passengers, all watching now, recording, judging, remembering. She belongs here, she said louder this time. The ground agent frowned, glancing between the attendants. Show me the system log. Ender. Lena held up the tablet, scrolling quickly, but Clara snatched it from her hand before the screen could face the crowd. Trainees don't access passenger data during disputes, Clara said, forcing a smile. Company policy. Ava spoke up for the first time in minutes. Company policy shouldn't hide the truth. That sentence, small, steady, surgical, sliced through every layer of the lie. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. The moment was now documented, irreversible. Lina's voice cracked. It's right there, in green. Clara shouted over her, Enough! You're out of line. The man in beige leaned toward Ava. You should listen to her, kid. It's not worth it. Ava turned toward him slowly. You're right, she said quietly. It's not worth it for you. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. The ground agent looked uneasy. Clara, maybe just double-check the manifest. Clara snapped. I said I've handled it. But she hadn't. Because the cabin had shifted, the invisible tide of perception had turned. A passenger near the back whispered, This is discrimination. Another murmured, You can feel it, the tone, the arrogance. And then, through the soft hum of the engines, Ava finally pressed the call button on her phone. One ring, then another. A man's voice came through, deep, calm, composed. Ava, everything all right? Clara froze mid-sentence. The man in beige frowned. Ava looked straight ahead and said softly, Not yet, Daddy, but it will be. And somewhere, through the open cabin door, a ground agent's radio crackled to life. A single message echoing through the static. Confirming contact with Marcus Carter, CEO of Horizon Airlines. Silence. The kind that could end careers. For a few seconds, no one breathed. The name hung in the air like thunder caught mid-echo. Marcus Carter. Some passengers blinked, unsure if they heard right. Others whispered, half disbelief, half recognition. The man in beige swallowed hard, shifting in his seat. Clara's smile cracked for the first time. Sir, there must be some confusion, she said, forcing a light laugh. Marcus Carter can't possibly. Ava held the phone to her ear, her voice small but steady. Daddy, she said, my seat isn't mine. The cabin went completely still. Even the engine sounded distant now, like the world outside was holding its breath. Marcus's voice came through the speaker, calm, patient, the voice of someone who had built empires from storms. Put me on speaker, sweetheart. Ava did. His voice filled the cabin, deep and composed. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Marcus Carter, CEO of Horizon Airlines. Every passenger turned. Clara's hands twitched at her sides. Sir, you tore up my daughter's boarding pass, Marcus said. You accused her of fraud. On my plane. The words landed heavy, deliberate. Ava didn't flinch. She'd seen her father calm before, and she knew what came next. Clara stammered. Mr. Carter, this is a misunderstanding. Marcus's tone didn't rise, but it sharpened. You're right about that. The misunderstanding was thinking I'd let it slide. A ripple of gasps rolled through the cabin. Lena's lips parted, eyes wide. This was no longer an argument. This was an audit in real time. The man in beige straightened his tie, suddenly smaller in his seat. Sir, I didn't know. You didn't ask, Marcus interrupted. You assumed. Ava's gaze never left Clara's face. She whispered, almost to herself. It's always the same tone. For a split second, she was 6 years old again. Standing in an airport lounge beside her father, clutching his hand while a security guard told him, Sir, this section's for executives only. Her father had smiled then, the same calm now threading through his voice. I know. I own it. Right. Fonding, acted. Back then, She hadn't understood why he didn't shout. Now she did. The flight attendant's polished confidence began to fracture. "Mr. Carter, please understand." "I understand perfectly," he said. "And you're on speaker. Every passenger here is a witness." Lena stepped forward, trembling but resolute. "She's telling the truth. I saw the system." Her seats confirmed. "I was told not to say anything." Marcus's voice softened, not for Clara, for Lena. "Thank you for speaking up. Integrity still matters." Clara's eyes darted to the cabin door, as if searching for escape. The man in beige muttered, "Maybe we should all calm down." But the calm was already gone. Ava lowered the phone and looked at him. "You took my seat." Her voice didn't shake. It landed with the precision of her father's. "You thought I wouldn't fight for it because I'm young, because I'm black, because I'm quiet." The man opened his mouth but couldn't find a single word that fit. Marcus's voice returned, now measured, final. "Clara, step away from my daughter, right now." She did, slowly, like gravity had turned against her. From the front of the cabin, a ground marshal entered, headset in hand. "Mr. Carter." "Here," Marcus replied through the speaker. "Ground the flight. I'm inbound." Passengers gasped again. Someone whispered, "He's coming here?" The marshal nodded, quietly relaying confirmation into his radio. The intercom clicked. The captain's voice cracked with tension. Ladies and gentlemen, there will be a brief delay before departure." Ava looked out the window, the tarmac glowing gold beneath the late afternoon sun. She could see a black sedan speeding toward the gate. Clara swallowed, voice barely audible. "Mr. Carter, I didn't mean—" "You meant every word," he said. "That's what makes it worse." Ava turned the phone so the entire cabin could hear him clearly. "We built Horizon to take people places they've never been, not to remind them where they don't belong." Lena closed her eyes. Passengers nodded quietly, some wiping tears they didn't expect. Clara looked like she wanted to disappear. The man in beige just whispered, "God help me." Ava leaned back slightly in her seat, still standing but steady now, no longer small. "It's okay," she said softly, more to herself than anyone. "He's here." Outside, the sedan stopped. A man stepped out, dark suit, calm stride, no rush, only purpose. The flight wasn't moving, but the world had already shifted. The air inside the cabin felt different now, heavier, charged, as if gravity had doubled just for the people who'd crossed the line. Every whisper had gone silent. Every phone recording was aimed at the same small figure in the orange dress, standing firm in the aisle while her father's voice filled the cabin like law. Through the oval window, the black sedan rolled to a stop beside the jet bridge. 2 airport agents waited at the door. Heads bowed slightly as a tall black man in a charcoal suit stepped out. Calm, unhurried, unmistakable. Marcus Carter. Passengers gasped as the gate agent at the door received a direct call. "Confirm executive override," said a voice on the radio. "Confirmed," the agent stammered. "CEO en route to cabin." Clara's knuckles whitened against the headrest. Lena, the trainee, took a half step back to give Ava space. The man in beige just stared down at his shoes, suddenly fascinated by the floor. Ava was still on the call, her father's voice calm but laced with steel. "Sweetheart, I'm 5 minutes away. Don't argue. Don't move." "I wasn't planning to," she said softly. Marcus's tone lowered. Not anger, not even authority, something colder. "They think power shouts. Let's remind them what silence sounds like." Ava smiled faintly. She'd heard that line before. Across the cabin, Clara tried to regain control. She forced a brittle laugh. "Everyone, please stay seated. There's just been a misunderstanding." Her voice cracked on the last word. Lena looked at her. "You could fix this right now," she whispered. Clara didn't answer. She just pressed her nails into her palm, fighting panic. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been instructed to delay departure. Please remain in your seats." A passenger muttered, "He's really coming on board?" Another whispered, "This is about to go viral." Ava sat down, finally, in her rightful seat, 2A, but she didn't relax. She sat straight, hands folded neatly in her lap, like she was waiting for the verdict. Clara approached her cautiously, her voice trembling now under the weight of the cameras and stares. "Honey, please understand, We didn't know who you were. Ava turned her head slowly. You weren't supposed to. The answer landed like a stone dropped in water. Quiet, inevitable. The cockpit door opened. The co-pilot stepped out, whispering something to Clara that drained the last bit of color from her face. He's cleared to board. They're locking the gate for privacy. Through the small window, Marcus Carter's figure appeared, stepping into the jet bridge. Every step, measured, controlled. Ava's phone buzzed once. Message. I'm here. In a desolate, relating sected of God. Clara smoothed her uniform, whispering to herself, This can't be happening. Lena stood a few feet behind her, jaw set. It is. The cabin door opened. The CEO of Horizon Airlines stepped inside his own plane. No entourage, no press, just quiet authority that made every inch of the room smaller. He nodded once to the captain, who immediately stepped aside. Then he turned toward the aisle, his eyes landing first on Ava. She stood instantly. Hi, Daddy. Hi, baby. Dast. Is meekly on the potable. 200 people. The gentleness in his tone was almost disorienting after all the tension. Then he turned to Clara, and the softness vanished. You're the one who tore up my daughter's boarding pass? Clara stuttered. Sir, it was a misread. We didn't realize. No, Marcus interrupted, calm and surgical. You didn't check. He gestured toward Lena. And you tried to stop the one person who did. Lena's eyes widened. Sir, You did right, Marcus said simply. Stay where you are. Whiz. Clara tried again, desperate. Mr. Carter, if we'd known she was. He cut her off. If she wasn't my daughter, would you have treated her any different? No one answered. The silence itself was confession enough. Marcus exhaled through his nose. Slow. Ground the plane, he said. The captain's voice came through the intercom, shaky. Attention crew. By executive order, this flight is temporarily grounded. Passengers stared in disbelief. Phones caught every moment. Marcus turned back to Ava, lowering his voice. You did well. You didn't have to fight for your place. You only had to hold it. Ava nodded once. I remembered what you said, that fairness isn't granted, it's proven. He smiled faintly. And you just proved it. Then, to Clara, his voice dropped to a tone colder than anger. You called her a mistake. Now you'll learn what that word costs. And with that, the world inside, Flight 227 flipped, from humiliation to reckoning. You could feel the shift before anyone moved. The cabin wasn't just quiet, it was holding its breath. Cameras were still up, but no one dared speak. Even the hum of the air vents sounded like it had dimmed for what was about to come. Marcus Carter stood tall in the aisle, the light from the cabin windows framing his face like a verdict. Calm, not angry. The kind of calm that meant consequences were already in motion. He turned to Clara, the head attendant who had smiled through arrogance just 10 minutes ago. You said she didn't belong here, he said softly, almost conversationally. Do you still believe that? Clara shook her head, tears glinting at the corner of her eyes. No. Sir. Don't answer me, Marcus interrupted. Answer her. He gestured toward Ava, still standing beside seat 2A, eyes unwavering, small hands clasped in front of her. Every camera turned to her now. Clara's voice cracked. Ava, I didn't know who you were. Ava's answer was barely louder than a whisper, but it carried through the whole cabin. You weren't supposed to. It was the same line her father had taught her years ago. The one that meant everything about grace and power and the danger of being underestimated. The man in the beige suit shifted uncomfortably, trying to fade into the seat he no longer deserved. Marcus turned to him next. You, he said simply. The man flinched. Sir, I'm deeply sorry. For what? Marcus asked. For taking what wasn't yours, or for being caught doing it? The man's jaw clenched. I made a mistake. No, Marcus said, voice cool, surgical. You made a choice. He let the silence land like a hammer. Then he turned to the rest of the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't raise my voice. I raise standards. And what happened here today on a flight that carries my name, my employees, my passengers violated every standard we stand for. You could hear the subtle gasp of realization spreading across the rows. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out his Horizon ID, black metal, embossed with gold. This isn't just my company, he said. It's a promise that everyone who walks through these doors will be treated with dignity. Not questioned because of how they look, or how young they are, or how small they seem. He looked straight at Clara. You tore up that promise when you tore up that boarding pass. Clara broke, sobbing softly now. Mr. Carter, please, it wasn't meant that way. Marcus cut her off again, quiet but absolute. Intent doesn't erase impact. And the record. Every word landed with precision, and you could feel the entire first-class cabin learning something they'd never admit out loud, that authority can whisper louder than shouting ever could. Lena stood near the galley, still clutching her tablet, trembling between fear and awe. Marcus turned toward her. What's your name? Lena, sir. Lena Mendez. Lena Mendez. You spoke the truth when silence was easier. You'll be recognized for that. Her eyes widened. Sir, I just did what was right. One flight two. That's exactly what leadership is, Marcus replied. He faced the entire crew now, his voice carrying like a quiet storm. You all forgot what flying represents. People don't come aboard these planes to be judged. They come to be seen, to be safe, to belong. No one moved. No one even blinked. A passenger whispered, He's rewriting the whole airline in real time. Marcus exhaled slowly and turned to the captain near the door. We're not leaving this gate until accountability does. That Wade, the captain nodded, pale, radio in hand. Understood, Mr. Carter. Marcus placed one hand on Ava's shoulder, grounding her. Sweetheart, look at me. She looked up. Yes, Daddy. This moment isn't about anger, he said. It's about proof. Proof that dignity doesn't need a uniform to stand tall. She nodded, small but resolute. He turned back to the crowd. You called her a fraud in the company she'll one day run. 2. Maxer. And then he said the line that froze every heartbeat in the room, the one that would go viral before the plane even left the gate. You thought you were protecting first class. You just forgot who built it. The cabin fell dead silent. Phones stopped recording. Not because they had to, but because even the witnesses wanted to remember this moment without a lens. Marcus didn't smile. He just said quietly, Now, let's finish what you started. And with that, he reached for the intercom. Marcus's hand closed around the intercom like a gavel meeting would. The captain stood frozen beside him, headset trembling slightly. A faint chime echoed through the cabin, the kind that usually precedes an announcement. But this wasn't protocol. This was judgment. This is Marcus Carter, CEO of Horizon Airlines. His voice came, clear and calm over the speakers. Effective immediately, this flight is grounded pending crew review and passenger safety verification. Weather deferent, the reaction was instant. A collective murmur, shock, disbelief. Phones lifted again. Trembling, the man in beige ran a hand through his hair, muttering, Oh my God. Clara's breath came out in a short sob, mascara streaking down her cheek. Ava sat back down in 2A, fastening her seatbelt with a click that sounded louder than any engine. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't smug. Just steady. The door to the cabin opened. 2 uniformed ground managers stepped in, one holding a clipboard, the other a small tablet showing the flight manifest. By executive order, crew leads are to be relieved pending investigation. One announced formally. Clara looked around, eyes pleading. Sir, please, I've worked here 12 years. Marcus didn't even look at her. And in 12 minutes, you unlearned everything that mattered. The room sank into silence again. He gestured toward Lena. She'll assist you in the review. Lena froze, stunned. Me, sir? You did what others wouldn't, he said simply. That's what leadership looks like. A quiet round of applause started somewhere in the back, hesitant at first, then building as passengers realized what they were witnessing. Marcus turned toward the man in beige, still sunk low in his seat. You can stay seated, he said, voice level. You'll have plenty of time to think about what entitlement feels like when the world stops pretending to cater to it. The man didn't answer. He just nodded, red-faced, eyes down. Outside the windows, the afternoon light shifted, golden rays cutting through the narrow cabin. It caught Ava's small hands folded neatly on her lap, the silver edges of her father's ID gleaming beside her. Marcus exhaled, slow and deliberate. We ground planes for safety, he said, meeting the eyes of the passengers. But today we grounded one for dignity. Every camera caught it. Every heart in that cabin felt it. Then he leaned down beside Ava, lowering his voice so only she could hear. You handled yourself perfectly. Remember this, okay? Justice doesn't have to shout. Ava looked up at him and whispered, It just has to stand. Marcus smiled faintly, pride softening the edges of his command. Exactly. There was Disley that embody. He turned back to the cabin one last time, straightening his jacket. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. What you witnessed today wasn't a disruption, it was a correction. The ground crew nodded, already escorting Clara toward the door. Lena stood frozen in disbelief, the passengers clapping again. Not loud, but sincere, the sound of respect being restored. The flight hadn't moved an inch, but something far greater had taken off. When the door finally closed behind the dismissed crew, the cabin exhaled as one. The tension that had once filled every inch of the air dissolved into something softer, quiet relief, quiet awe. Marcus Carter stood in the aisle, the sunlight from the window cutting across his face. No victory smile, no dramatic pose, just stillness. He spoke like someone leaving a message for time itself. Let me be clear, he said. This wasn't about embarrassment. It was about accountability, about how we treat people when we think no one's watching. His eyes moved from the front row to the back, meeting each passenger's gaze without flinching. We build companies, we build planes, we build policies, but none of it matters if we forget to build respect. The passengers were silent. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade beneath his voice. He turned to Lena. From this moment on, you report directly to Human Resources Training. You'll be leading a new protocol for passenger equity. Her eyes widened. Sir, I thank you. Then Marcus faced Ava, still seated in 2A, her small hands folded, her expression calm and radiant in the glow of the afternoon sun. He crouched beside her and whispered, You didn't raise your voice. You raised the standard. Ava nodded slowly. Like you taught me. He stood again, straightened his jacket, and addressed the cabin one last time. We don't measure progress by who flies first class, he said. We measure it by who we refuse to leave behind. A quiet round of applause began, gentle, respectful, human. Some passengers stood. One woman whispered, That's leadership. Marcus gave a small nod and pressed the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your CEO speaking. Thank you for your patience and for witnessing what accountability looks like mid-air. 2-5, 2000 and Tappet. He looked once more at his daughter, then toward the window, where the light flared like a promise. The engines came alive again, steady and sure. The plane began to taxi down the runway, slower than usual, but lighter somehow. Ava looked out, whispering to herself as the clouds drew near. We're still flying, Daddy. Marcus smiled faintly. We always will.